Hi, welcome to another episode of I Don't Have the Answers, but let's talk about it anyway. I'm your host, Tim Four, and I appreciate you taking the time to join me today. Tonight, my show is a little different than what you're used to. Tonight, the show is going to be scripted. It'll be pre-written, rehearsed, and reviewed for public consumption. The reason for this difference is that I don't want the message to be misrepresented, misunderstood, or just plain missed. I believe that this is an important message, so I've debated over each word, each pause, and thought. I've had it read and reviewed by those that I feel most comfortable with to ensure that the point is delivered accurately. I'm explaining this not for your acceptance, but just to set the stage. I want to also point out that if you're not capable of listening to the entirety of this episode with an open mind, stop right now. Don't proceed. To take it further than that, if you're not able to hear the sincerity and the empathy with which I'm about to speak, don't plan on listening to me in the future either. I'd rather lose you as a follower than to have you judge me incorrectly. If you're still paying attention, tonight's show is about the state of our country right now. I know you've probably been inundated with this, but this past week, a man by the name of George Floyd was killed by a law enforcement officer by the name of Derek Chauvin. And it was caught on camera. As heinous and despicable as this may be, it isn't the primary subject matter of this episode. My show tonight is about everything that has come afterwards. There are 3 specific things that I want to talk about tonight: reactions, expectations, and outcome. First, reactions. I understand it's terrible. It was a terrible act of excessive force that ended in the worst possible way. But that behavior that it has sparked has me dumbfounded. I expect and empathize with the community coming together to express their feelings. These are acceptable reactions to a tragedy. They are emotional and instinctual. We would have to be a heartless mass for this to have no effect. Reacting to the event with violence, however, confuses me. In what backward sense is it okay to assault people that had absolutely nothing to do with the crime? Why is it justified to walk out of a retail establishment with goods that you didn't pay for? Will these acts bring Mr. Floyd back? Will the felonious acts cause the lawmakers to suddenly change the way that crimes are prosecuted? Has there ever been a time that this kind of behavior was rewarded en masse? Don't expect me to provide a solution to these questions. When in doubt, refer to the name of the show. I only know that I don't get it. Next, we come to expectations. What is it that we expect from all this? I learned recently that there's a large number of people out there that expect everyone to be up in arms and to join the fight. I've even seen people start a new movement and a new hashtag that insinuates that silence is acceptance. For the record, that is totally wrong. I don't have any clue how that logic has any basis. Maybe the silent ones are trying to come up with something coherent to say. Have you ever heard a large number of people talking in loud voices, but they're not talking about the same thing? Recently, I had the pleasure, I guess, of being a participant in a Zoom call with 30 kindergartners, all talking at the same time. None of them saying the same thing. And trying to pay attention was impossible. This is what this has become. Everybody screaming, everybody shouting, but nobody saying the same thing. So you can't make out clearly what their message is. The whisper of a harmonious chorus can be understood easier than the yells of a horde out of sync. One would expect that a movement that has a specific desired outcome would be better served to say it eloquently, instead of violently acting out on the streets or in social media. I'm not saying that peaceful protesting shouldn't be allowed. On the contrary, I advocate and support that with all my being. Last night, as a matter of fact, my mother was out at a peaceful gathering that erupted into something different. I just think that if we expect anything to change, we have to have a plan to make it happen. I'm not an expert and I haven't fact-checked this, but I don't believe that there have ever been any laws created by yelling them from a sidewalk. And I've never heard of an election campaign that cited looting as their primary platform. There's a lot that we need to do to change the current state of things, but I don't believe that this is the way. The minds of the people that need the most changing are not going to be swayed in this manner. It's just not going to happen. Finally, I want to mention outcome. What is going to happen as a result of all of this? First, we take the large corporations that have been looted. People say, well, they're insured, or they can afford it. That's true. The companies themselves can't afford it. Unfortunately, the people that work in those stores aren't so lucky. The CVS and Target stores in Minneapolis were closed due to the looting that took place. That means that those people weren't getting a paycheck for those days. The more than 170 other stores weren't able to operate either. That means that the people that worked in these stores, and more than likely lived near them, are not able to work because their neighbors, people that also lived near them, decided that they wanted to take advantage of an emotional situation and hurt the people and businesses that had absolutely nothing to do with the death of Mr. Floyd. Another thing that some people just aren't getting is that some businesses don't file claims depending on how much was taken. They write it off as a loss. Now they have documentation on the losses on their books. The next step is to deny bonuses and raises because they took that loss. And all they have to say is, it was because of the looting. And everyone will understand. But that's just the financial outcome. There's the emotional outcome of the losses of life across the country, as innocent men and women that have been injured and killed as a result. Not just officers of the law that clock in every day with the understanding that it may be their last shift. I'm talking about the parents of a 19-year-old man that was killed in Detroit, Michigan, when someone fired rounds into the crowd of protesters. Why is that something that has to happen when we're already dealing with a tragedy? What about the fact that not every officer of the law deserves this kind of abuse? What about the families that spent all day Saturday huddled around televisions and phones crying because they didn't know what was happening to their spouses and their fathers? The good, hard-working police officers that do their job happily every day are now second-guessing their every move to make sure that they don't end up on the news for writing a traffic citation. Is that the outcome that we're hoping for? Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional because that happened yesterday. A very close personal friend of mine was in the middle of all this, trying to help a fellow officer that was injured and abused. And we had no clue what was going on. Now, I'm not saying that the system is 100% perfect. I know personally, for a fact, that it is not. What I'm saying is, how do we fix it? I, like many other people, know that it needs to be fixed. I know that it needs an update. I have no idea how to do it, though. I do know that this is not the way. We should be using this time right now to grieve. When we have, we could then start to put together a plan to successfully, I say this again, successfully correct the course of this ship. A moderately intelligent man once said, "The course of a river cannot be changed by striking at a raindrop." With that in mind, we need to come together to form that new plan. We need to vote in those that can make the change. We need to change the historical statistics that show that only 50% or less of our minority citizens show up to vote at the polls. We can't react like this in the days following the event and expect a residual outcome months later if we don't show up. If you don't like the options that we have for our leaders, find another option. Hell, be another option. Lighting fires in the streets, fighting news reporters, and stealing televisions aren't going to fix things. You, however, can fix them. Now is the time for like-minded people to come together and figure out a better way. I may be wrong, though. I don't have the answers. Thank you for joining, and I hope that this has brought some kind of enlightenment. Please, comment below, share this, talk about it amongst your friends. We have to get the movement moving in the right direction. Thank you.